The ANTIFA Manual. Do not distribute to any cis-white males, non-POC, non-LGBTQ peoples, aka fascists. Introduction. If you are reading this, it's because someone close to our movement trusted you with it. Please do not distribute to anyone who may attempt to harm or denigrate what we are doing. This is an anti-fascist or ANTIFA manual. If you are reading this, you already know that we are a social justice movement against hatred, intolerance and bigotry. This manual outlines where we've been, where we're at, and where we're headed within the next 100 years. But first, to understand how we got here, we have to understand white privilege. For hundreds if not thousands of years, the cis-white male power structure controlled the media and disbursement of information. First came the printing press, controlled by white males. Then came mass media such as newspapers and television, controlled by white males. But the next evolution of media was born in a time when the cis-white male power structure began to lose its firm grip on the dissemination of ideas. Some of our kind have begun to infiltrate high-level positions of power in major media organizations. And of course, the new king of idea dissemination is social media. This is the new battleground for our war against fascism. Whites, especially cis-white males, have proven to be the greatest evil mankind has ever known. From Hitler to our very own Harry S. Truman, who dropped the atom bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, to the slave traders of old, no one has proven to do more harm to mankind than white men. From their murderous plundering, for example of the Native Americans and African slaves, white males have achieved status and power in the United States and Western Europe. Never indulge any fantasy by the fascists that white men have also cured diseases, lifted people out of poverty through Western capitalism, democracy, or any other facetious claim they may make about such men. Their gains were only achieved through rape and plunder. Hence, cis-white males have inherent privilege in our society. This is the basis on which people of color, LGBTQ, the disabled, and other groups that need protection will level the playing field and form a new world order, aka one world government. A government by protected classes of people, for protected classes of people, for the protection and betterment of all of humanity, creating a culture of tolerance. To create a culture of tolerance, we must first eliminate all forms of hate speech. Every idea critical of our movement or our way of thinking must be condemned as racist, homophobic, misogynist, etc. We have the facts and history on our side. When all else fails, compare someone to Hitler. Every once in a while, one of our minority group friends will become disillusioned and speak out as a conservative, aka fascist. Belittle them as delusional. They speak against their own rational self-interest. Our color, my blackness, for example, comes first. It defines who I am. Black first, American second. Gay, lesbian first, little person, dwarf second, American third, and so on. Crashing the borders. Most liberals are not Antifa, yet, but soon they will be. Refugee crises such as those created by the situation in Syria are the ideal way to get more people of color, POC, into America. They need our help. There are pictures of dead babies who have washed ashore onto beaches. Use imagery such as this to get support for expanding the POC, minority population in the United States. Never call any immigrant illegal, obviously. They are undocumented. It doesn't matter whether they came over here to smuggle drugs or if they were brought here by their parents at a young age. Migrants from Mexico and South America will play a crucial role in Antifa activities in the next 100 years. By 2117, 100 years from now, our goal is to have 70% of the U.S. population be non-white. By then, we will hopefully have subverted the power structure enough to eventuate our ends. Control the media. It's important to gain control of the media through any means necessary. In these early stages of this movement, it's important not to alienate any cis-white males who are on our side. Use white shame and white guilt to kowtow men in positions of power into following our ideals. Some major media conglomerates are swinging to our side, but they have not gone far enough. Social media is the new battlefront of ideals. We've seen what kind of power these outlets yield by kicking major fascists off their platform before. This will and this must only continue. If you are seeking positions of power in the media, be sure to obfuscate and hide your true intentions on the various social media platforms. Better to remain a mystery and wield massive power than blatantly shouting your viewpoints from the hilltops. We have the objective truth on our side. Always project that. Use social media as a baton to slap down anyone who holds fascist viewpoints. Call them racist, homophobic, misogynistic. Create an echo chamber around you. Many of us first learned about ANTIFA and gained our views on college campuses and universities across the country. This needs to start earlier. Take up teaching as a profession. Educate the youth about the dangers of fascism. Befriend those vulnerable students who you suspect of having fascist-leaning parents. Teach little Timmy not just how to read good, but also how to think and act good. Once we firmly have control of social media and most major media platforms, it's time to start Operation Truth. The way many social media platforms currently work is that people are primarily exposed to viewpoints they primarily already agree with. This creates a kind of echo chamber for that individual. However, once we control the flow of information, we can slowly start spreading the truth to the fascists who reject our ideology. This must be done very carefully. Slowly, at first. Begin suggesting a piece of news, video, tweet or post that the opposition could conceivably believe in. Create new outlets of media that do not come with the baggage of known bias. Convert major new media stars into witting or unwitting pawns for our cause. Believe the way we do or you will be fired. The next crucial step is to threaten the livelihoods of anyone who dares speak out against our agenda. They are, after all, fascists who are clearly racist, homophobic or misogynistic. You can't run a company with someone like that in your midst. Once we achieve this end, we'll almost be able to taste our victory, yet we have so much further to go to achieve our ends. Fearing for one's livelihood is clearly a big motivator. Cis-white male fascists will begin to hide in the shadows. They may lurk online on message boards and underground media, but will be afraid to speak up using their own voice and name, for fear of being labeled a bigot. Many fascist corporate overlords still exist and will offer some of these hate-mongers a place to work. But it's only a matter of time before our ranks infiltrate even the most evil of corporations, who tolerate such hate speech from their employees. Phase 2, the socialization of capital. Never reveal our endgame, but the obvious next step once we control the media is the socialization of capital. This will obviously require major political power. With, hopefully, 70% people of color in this nation, we may begin to have a chance at these ends. Obviously, we start with healthcare. It's, after all, a basic human right. Everyone knows someone who died of cancer or who got sick somehow. Obamacare was better than what we had before, but it was built with the healthcare lobbyists' consent. We need single payer, and we need it now. Americans have come to accept that it's okay for them to be locked in a cage rather than not pay their taxes. Never mind, most of the money collected goes to the military-industrial complex and to engage in imperialism abroad. Wars against brown people who happen to live above oil-rich lands. As people of color, LGBTQ, little people, the disabled, Muslims, and other minority classes slowly become the majority, we will naturally vote pro-Antifa politicians into office. It is, after all, only in our best interest. After healthcare, the next target for socialization will obviously be the media. Use one of the government's only tools against big corporations, antitrust, anti-monopoly laws. to split the media into worker-owned, Antifa-controlled entities. Currently only the rich and upper middle class get to enjoy the benefits of Wall Street and all it has to offer. If the workers owned and controlled their own businesses, everyone would win, except the big fat cat CEOs who would be out of a job. We will have to gradually raise the tax rates on both the 1% as well as the mid to upper middle class to achieve our ends. Raise the minimum wage to a livable wage, especially in places like San Francisco, Los Angeles, and New York. Build homes for the homeless and confiscate foreclosed properties from banks to give to the homeless. After media, banks and finance will be our next target, followed by technology and manufacturing. One thing we must be sure of is to never let the white man excuse himself of his obligations to us by taking so-called reparations. That time has surely passed, and would give the cis white male power structure an excuse to stop caving to our demands. Oh, we gave Jamal $100,000 in reparations 2 years ago, we don't need to help him now that he's a penniless crack addict on the street now, they will surely say, speeding up progress. To achieve these ends, there are some tactics that we must use to speed our way towards progress. It's well known that whites in America are not producing as many offspring as their counterparts. It's important to make abortion, on demand and without apology, overwhelmingly available in predominantly white communities. We must lower the bar to access birth control in these communities and use media to promulgate the image of childless white people as being sexy, hip and cool. Meanwhile, the fascists on the right will continue to attempt to restrict access to abortions on demand. Middle-class whites tend to have the ability to pay, even for out-of-state travel, to get their fetuses aborted. Currently, the predominantly people of color-dominated poor communities have little choice but to keep a baby to term. Even if sent into the foster system, these children will one day lay the groundwork for our eventual New World Order and One World Government. Phase 3, New World Order. Imagine a world free of hatred and bigotry. Imagine a world where you'll never have to be called the N-word again. Imagine a world where you can be as gay as you want, and not be called a raging, dick-sucking where Antifa ideas reign supreme and all hateful, microaggressive speech is eradicated. One way to accomplish this will be to tag, or microchip, every human being on the planet, and they will do so voluntarily. Use the guise of entertainment and other benefits to lure the people to this end. This chip, embedded in the hand or neck, will allow Antifa-approved regulators to monitor the citizenry of the world. Information accessible, by waving a wand a few feet away from the chip, would be DNA content, including percent of color, genetic disadvantages, etc., political leanings, scored by past social media posts, earnings, known associates, Antifa status, etc. We must ensure that only Antifa-approved regulators can access this data, lest we veer too far into fascism ourselves. Thus, with the wave of a wand, one would be able to tell whether that vaguely beigeish-looking person is allowed to use the term nigga. For example, in rap lexicon it is popular to say, "Where my niggas at? I got hoes in different area codes." While clearly misogynistic, a person of color has the right to use the term nigga. Antifa regulators will have to determine an acceptable percentage threshold of color in one's DNA that makes it acceptable to use the term nigga. If you are only 17% of African descent, perhaps it is not okay to use that term. Clearly, if you are 1% or less of African descent, it is problematic, although some dark Asians can get away with saying it just because of how dark their skin tone is. However, if someone of, say, 80% Caucasian descent attempts to use the N-word with the hard R comma, they will clearly be in violation of hate crime speech. While prison would clearly be too harsh of a punishment for such an individual, demotion of status, power and income would not be out of the question and should be the norm. The issue of using force to achieve our ends is a tricky one. Always shout down fascist opponents. Disrupt their speeches, counter-rally their rallies. Force the media to show our side as the righteous one that it is. When it comes to the issue of terror, we do not condone mass murder. However, a tiny majority of people who happen to be Muslim have decided to blow themselves up for their cause. Clearly this is the result of hundreds of years of Western intervention by cis-white males on their culture. Osama bin Laden would not have attacked the WTC and Pentagon had we not dropped atom bombs on Japan in World War II, for example. Palestinians are clearly victims and have little to no choice than to avenge their relatives' deaths at the hands of the Israeli government. Make no mistake, Jews are a protected class of people, but we do not condone Israeli aggression against Palestinians. Phase 4, One World Government. Our movement will eventually spread to other nations, indeed, it has already begun. Some peoples will prove excessively resistant to our brand of Antifa, such as those who were previously burned by communism or failed socialist states. Make no mistake, we will prevail where others have failed. Their leaders' lust for status, power and wealth eventually led them to create layers of power full of corrupt state officials. Antifa have the power of the people on our side, or we will, eventually, and will not succumb to such a fate. It is only natural that the ideologies we espouse spread throughout the globe. Starving Africans will finally be lifted out of poverty when we redistribute the wealth of the Western 1% to them, and to our brothers and sisters here at home. Container ship after container ship will be converted to massive passenger cruise liners and will ferry poverty-stricken brown people from around the world to the former United States and Western Europe. Jobs will flower aplenty at all of the world's worker-owned businesses. Those who can't work will be provided a stipend and unlimited supply of opiates, marijuana, meth and cocaine to occupy their free time. Sound too good to be true? It isn't. This is what we're fighting for. This is what we believe. We are Antifa. Either you are with us, or you are a fascist. Please do not distribute to cis-white males, non-POC, non-LGBTQ, etc. Use common sense.